The sexual and social ambiguities of Rosalind's adopted identity are crucial to the effects of As You Like It. So posed an A-level English literature question recently. Certainly, Rosalind's adopted identity and disguise as Ganymede provide a great deal of enjoyment for the audience. We laugh at the ridiculous notion of Orlando undertaking to woo a supposed young man and call this person Rosalind, when actually that is exactly who he or she is. There is also no doubt that Rosalind's disguise enables her to act as a catalyst in bringing potential lovers more quickly to marriage, which, given her status as a woman, is socially subversive from an Elizabethan point of view. Ambiguities arise from her disguise. All the time, a thinking audience has to be alive to the potential multiple meanings present in the words of a speaker who intends to use her male disguise, firstly, to secure her safety, and then for other wider purposes, including to gain an exclusive insight into the male sex and to have an enormous amount of fun. Another issue that complicates the idea of how an audience would react to Rosalind's disguise is the fact that in Shakespeare's day, the actor would have been a boy, meaning that Rosalind would be a boy playing a woman who is disguised as a man who has agreed with a particular character to play the role of a particular woman, which is her. Well, stay tuned. Let's explore the sexual and social ambiguities of Rosalind's adopted identity as Ganymede in As You Like It. This is Schofield on Shakespeare. Rosalind's disguise is triggered by a patriarchal abuse of power. In Act 1, Scene 3, her uncle Duke Frederick bursts in upon her gentle musings with her cousin Celia about a hunky wrestler and promptly banishes her from the court. His parting words are unequivocal. Here's Felix Aylmer as Duke Frederick in the 1936 film version of the play.
You, niece, provide yourself. If you outstay the time, upon mine honour, and in the greatness of my word, you die.
The egotistical abstract noun greatness gives an indication that Duke Frederick's cruel decision is more about his own desperate desire to exert insecure authority rather than behave reasonably. And indeed, when pressed for an explanation, he resorts to the wholly unsatisfactory and indirect.
Not thy father's daughter, there's enough.
Duke Frederick's dismissive line gives a crucial insight into the patriarchal world which the characters of the play inhabit. Rosalind's own actions and behaviour as a woman are deemed insignificant in comparison to her passive inherited status as the daughter of a man, even one who has been absent for some time. Her female voice is considered irrelevant, and so she is left with the terrifying thought of having to fend for herself alone in an alien land, far from familiarity and comfort. Celia decides that she is not prepared to put up with her father's dictatorial irrationality any longer and chooses to accompany Rosalind into exile. But two women wandering unaccompanied far from hearth and home in Elizabethan England would feel vulnerable to sexual and financial attack, resulting in Rosalind devising the idea of her male disguise. Here's Elizabeth Bergner as Rosalind in the 1936 movie.
Were it not better that I did suit me, all points like a man, and in my heart lie there what hidden women's fear their will. We'll have a swashing and a marshal outside, as many other mannish cowards have, that do outface it with their semblances.
Note Rosalind's cousin's reaction to this idea in this production. Celia gasps and puts her hand on her face to indicate her shock at such a proposition and the potential opportunities it offers, perhaps. So clearly, submerging your female identity would not be an everyday occurrence for an Elizabethan woman, however Shakespeare's comedies may suggest the contrary. And Rosalind offers an intellectual reason to justify such a radical move. The use of the phrases semblance and mannish cowards suggests that acting and deceit are often used by men when attempting to conform to ideas about masculinity and gender. And if many men are cowards or weak inside, something traditionally associated with women, and are able to hide this with an appearance of swagger and seeming confidence, then why shouldn't Rosalind be able to do the same? So even before Rosalind adopts her identity as Ganymede, Shakespeare is gently questioning the rigidity of male-female gender barriers, and this develops further when Rosalind enters the Forest of Arden with Celia and the clownish fool Touchstone. The three of them are all exhausted and hungry from their journey. Here's Celia, played by Romola Gari in Branner's 2006 film of the play.
Oh, Jupiter, how weary are my spirits.
Touchstone pedantically confirms that he too is shattered when he responds,
I care not for my spirits if my legs were not weary.
So both sexes are clearly experiencing significant feelings of fatigue. However, now that Rosalind is disguised as a man, she feels the need to demonstrate the traditional male quality of strength, even though it is not an accurate representation of her feelings, as it may frequently be with some men as well. Whereas in Branner's production, Celia has succumbed to expectations about female fragility and is being carried by Touchstone, the disguised Rosalind walks freely and ponders,
I could find it in my heart to disgrace my man's apparel and to cry like a woman, but I must comfort the weaker vessel. Therefore, courage, good Helena.
Rosalind's words are ambiguous. On a basic level, she is showing a desire to play her role as a man as successfully and conscientiously as possible. A role which requires her to show strength in adversity and chivalry to the supposedly weaker sex. However, if Rosalind is indeed able to morph so seamlessly into a convincing man, both in appearance and behaviour, it does beg the question as to what extent do such fixed gender assignments, such as weakness for women, strength for men, even necessary or appropriate. For as subsequent scenes in the play show, Rosalind is able to convincingly take on the male role, and even plays on assumptions about her own sex's weaknesses to help them secure food and shelter. In conversation with a shepherd and referring to a presumably prostrate and panting Celia, she cries,
Here's a young maid with travel much oppressed and faints for succour.
This appeal for pity based on gender has the desired effect, with Corin responding,
And wish for her sake more than for mine own, my fortunes were more able to relieve her.
Note Celia's theatrical and swoon back onto the tree during Rosalind's appeals for help in Branner's production. It is not just Rosalind, therefore, who shows an understanding of gender stereotypes. Celia is also to play up to them and use them to her advantage. Juliet Dussenbehr in Shakespeare and the Nature of Women develops these ideas about gender further, and referring to Rosalind's speech in which she recognises how she should behave as a man, writes, "A consciousness of masculinity and femininity as acting is implicit here. Men and women perform on stage the gender roles which they are required to perform in society, thus highlighting the theatricality inherent in social behaviour. In doing so, they unsettle those social roles by demonstrating that they play parts which have been learnt, rather than determined by innate characteristics. Or put differently, a play is the perfect medium through which to show the artificiality of gender restraints, as we as audience members have already agreed to partake in the illusion that what we are watching on stage is or reflects reality. If we accept that actors playing roles can temporarily convince us of their authenticity through the quality of their acting, scripts and setting, then it is only one step further to accept that all the world's a stage and that such artificial role-playing may be institutionally prevalent within the wider world and communities in which we live as men and women. Rosalind's adopted identity therefore provides opportunities for the audience, and indeed the characters on stage, to reflect on social expectations relating to gender. However, in the sections discussed above, she is with people who know her real identity, Celia and Touchstone, or with a stranger from a different class, Corin. The more interesting ambiguities about her adopted identity arise when she comes into contact with people important to her who don't know about her disguise, most pertinently Orlando, the man she has fallen in love with. Their first meeting in the Forest of Arden takes place in Act 3, Scene 2. By this stage, Rosalind no longer needs this disguise. In Act 2, Scene 4, Corin has agreed to purchase Rosalind and Celia a cottage, pasture and a flock. And if they are in need of male protection, they have Touchstone to call upon. So Rosalind is therefore choosing out of her own free will to continue her roleplay as Ganymede. One reason for this choice becomes rapidly apparent in this scene. It allows her to subvert the usual passivity of an Elizabethan woman wishing to hasten upon a relationship, but largely powerless through convention to do so. Her disguise enables her to converse to Orlando on a more equal male-male footing, which results in her finding out more about the authenticity of his feelings, but also gives rise to sexual ambiguities. When Orlando agrees to woo Ganymede and pretend he is Rosalind, is he doing so merely out of a self-indulgent desire to talk as much as possible about his loved one, or is there some homoerotic attraction towards the person whom he quickly describes as a pretty youth? Orlando becomes fascinated by Ganymede, whom Rosalind has decided needs to prattle as much as possible in order to maintain his attention and presence. Mildly amused by Ganymede's generalisations about the different movements of time, Orlando asks prompt questions such as, "Who ambles time withal?" and "Who doth he gallop withal?" before further questions show a desire to find out more about this precocious youth's backgrounds.
Where dwell you, pretty youth? Are you native of this place?
Although at this stage the pair have not discussed love, there remains an undercurrent of homoerotic tension on stage, partly caused by Rosalind having elected to give herself the name Ganymede. In Act 1, Scene 3, she justified this name by saying it was given to Jove's own page. This is correct, for in classical mythology the king of the gods carried a Trojan boy of great beauty, Ganymede, away to be cupbearer to the gods. However, Shakespeare's audience would have equated the name Ganymede with homosexual love. As Stanley Wells in Shakespeare's Sex and Love confirms, the name Ganymede was a common term for a male's young male sexual partner. Now, in Act 3, Scene 2, Orlando is not aware that this pretty youth that is beginning to intrigue him is called Ganymede. However, the audience will be well aware of this, meaning that they will be alive from the beginning to the possibility of homoerotic tension as a source of further enjoyment in the play. For, contrary to popular myth, homosexual relationships were not uncommon in Shakespeare's time. Here's Stanley Wells again. Male-to-male sexual relationships were common, even though later ages have often tried to submerge the fact. And there is good reason to believe that they were not regarded as subversive unless they involved rape of a child. Alan Sinfield in Unfinished Business in Cultural Materialism applies this understanding of the Elizabethan sexual context explicitly to Shakespearean comedies. In early modern England, same-gender relationships were not terribly important. In As You Like It and Twelfth Night, homoeroticism is part of the fun of the wooing, but it wouldn't be fun if such scenarios were freighted with the anxieties that people experience today. So Shakespeare intended us to enjoy the sexual risky ambiguities of seeing two men flirt with each other, even if one of them is a woman disguised as a man, or a boy actor playing a woman disguised as a man.